From emails to reports and project proposals, it's hard to meet the demands of today's competing priorities without some help. Grammarly is the essential AI communication assistant that boosts your productivity at work so you can get more of what you need done faster. Just a few clicks can tailor your tone and writing so you come across exactly as you intend. Get time back to focus on your high-impact work. Download Grammarly for free at grammarly.com/podcast.
Betting on sports can be hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers. Their fee is free until they win. Find out more information at forthepeople.com/bestbets or dial pound law, that is pound 529 from your cell phone, and that is FOR, thepeople.com/bestbets. This is a paid advertisement. Hey, warm and friendly hello. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Heaps with myself, Greg Heaps Peterson, now part of the Beeson Family Podcast. We've got a great podcast for you. And first things first, happy Thanksgiving to you and to all. As for this Thanksgiving, no matter if you're going to be traveling to someone else's, whether you're baking up a Thanksgiving dinner for like 20, 25 people, hey, I know that there are some people that are working on this Thanksgiving. I'll be on Beeson from 4 to 8 p.m. Pacific time, so I can relate to you. I probably will be eating like turkey at 3 a.m. So everyone has different things. This is not one of those shows to embarrass you about your favorite sides or anything like that. We won't be debating that because you got 100 other shows that are able to do that, but this show is here to make you money, and we will do so when we're joined in segment number 2 by Sean Paul. He does great work over at Action Network along the field of 68. We're going to talk about what we've been seeing in terms of these tournaments. We're also going to be breaking down the games that we've got for Thursday as well. A few teams that he's bullish/bearish Sean as well in the final segment. Going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday, this Thanksgiving Thursday, as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at Jada_41. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a fun day of college basketball on Wednesday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Now, I'm not able to give you everything in terms of what we saw on Wednesday because there are still some games going on, and I have to have this up by midnight Pacific, 3 o'clock a.m. Eastern. So right now, Dayton and UConn, it's 45-43, and the early part of the second half there, we are unsure of what happened in terms of Cal Baptist versus Fresno State, but looks like Fresno State is probably going to lose this one 62-54, but might be able to hang within the number. Houston versus Notre Dame still going on, as well as Marcus Burton out of the fold for Notre Dame. We shall see what happens there, but that said, we did see Villanova take down Rider 72-48. I'll be talking a little bit more about some of these Northeast teams tomorrow. It's Joe Budslick. He does a tremendous job over at Stretching the Floor.blogspot.com. He is going to be joining me, but for Villanova, it's been a hot and cold season, but the guy that has been hot for the team has been Eric Dixon. Led the way once again, 16 points, really his worst showing of the season, but 15 of 38 from three-point range for Villanova. Looks like they are starting to be able to find their sea legs. Syracuse starting to find their sea legs. They get a win, and they cover the 9.5. This by a count of 82-72, with Donnie Freeman being able to lead the way with 23 points for Cornell, 12 of 40 from three-point range. Syracuse, they did a rock-solid job in terms of not turning the ball over. 12-6, they win that turnover battle, and for Freeman, he was also able to throw in their 12 rebounds. As for Cornell, they lose the rebound battle by a count of 48-35. Just don't look like the same team that they were from a season ago. In Maui, we saw a very fun game between Michigan State and North Carolina. As Michigan State, they get the job done 94-91. Michigan State is shooting less than 25% from three-point range as a collective this season, so just imagine these guys when they start to heat up a little bit more from distance, and they went just 4 of 16 in this one. Meanwhile, for North Carolina, they go right around about 47.5% from 3, 11 of 23, with Drake Boom Boom Powell coming off the bench, going 4 of 6 from distance, 18 points. But RJ Davis just feels like he hasn't necessarily been the same scorer that he has been in past years. 16 points, 7 assists, not a bad effort, but not an amazing effort, but what was a good effort, Michigan State on the glass. They win that rebound battle 37-29, and they also overcome the fact that North Carolina actually won the turnover battle 11-12, but for Michigan State, they had on their side Mr. Trey Holloman, who was able to supply the team with 19 points, 7 assists, so very good effort out there. We also saw a very good effort from this team. How about Rutgers and the effort that they got from Mr. Dylan Harper? Wasn't enough to get the job done against Alabama, but more than enough to cover the double figures. 95-90 Alabama. They get the win with Mark Sears returning a little bit to form. He had in this game 24 points, and for Alabama as a whole, they go 10-25 from three-point range, so they're picking up there, but did have 20 turnovers for Alabama compared to the 9 of Rutgers. And Dylan Harper, 37 points in this game. Our good friend John Fanta tweeted this out. He is the only player in the last 20 seasons, as a freshman I should say, the only freshman over the last 20 years to have back-to-back 35-plus point games. So pretty impressive out there. And then another game that happened out west, SMU. They pick apart Washington State, 77-60 the final is for SMU. They just completely bludgeoned Washington State on the glass, 51-25. Now, you had no Cedric Coward in this game for Washington State. That hurt them quite a bit, but they still got dump trucked with that regard. You still had this Washington State team hoists up a bunch of threes, but they go just 10 of 33 from distance. So SMU, they did a nice job being able to control that with 12 points, 11 rebounds from Samat Yitaglu to be able to get the job done for SMU out there. Also being able to get the job done, Michigan, they completely dump truck Xavier by a count of 78-53 as Xavier ends this game on the wrong end of a 19-2 run. This was a single-digit game with about 7 minutes remaining, and Michigan, they just decide to be able to part the ways with this one as Danny Wolf, he starts out 4-4 from 3. He goes 4-5 overall from distance. 20 points, 14 rebounds. He controlled this game as Xavier, they lose a turnover battle 19-10. They actually won the battle on glass 38-36. But other than Ryan Conwell was able to give the team 19 points, Zach Freemantle had 14 points, 10 boards. Lots of no-shows in this game from Xavier, and there was a no-show from Indiana that we're going to be talking about with our good friend in Sean Paul a little bit later on, but 89-61, Louisville just absolutely takes it to Indiana. Indiana does go 7-20 from three-point range, but how about 23 turnovers in this game compared to Louisville's 15, and for Indiana, they actually win the battle on the glass 40-35, but double-double out Chucky Hepburn, 16 points, 7 steals, 10 rebounds, and they are going to be facing off against Louisville is West Virginia. It's West Virginia, the upset over Gonzaga. This game goes to overtime. West Virginia wins by a count of 86-78 as for West Virginia, they go 11-35 from 3. Javon Small comes up very big, 31.7 rebounds, and every starter other than Toby Okani had at least 6 rebounds in this game for West Virginia. They win the battle on the glass 42-36. Both teams had 13 turnovers apiece, and Graham Ike, 5 points, 4 rebounds, and 14 minutes in this one as you had Brandon Huff coming off the bench. He was able to supply the team with 19 points, and Ryan Nemmer continues to be very efficient. 12 assists to 1 turnover, but problem was he also went 1 of 10 from the floor, so needed a little bit more there, and you got something more out of this team. Iowa State, 99-71. They completely take apart Colorado in this one. Colorado does go 8 of 19 from three-point range, but also for Colorado, they lose a turnover battle 18-10. They lose a rebound battle 31-25, and Milan Mimosilovic was able to supply Iowa State with 24 points. So they were able to get the win in the 5th place game out there in Maui. Also being able to get a win. How about what we saw from old Chattanooga, 84-76. They're able to take apart a Bryant team that has been playing quite up tempo. Total was 160.5. So Lions just under, but Mekhi Richards, he was able to give that Chattanooga team some good production. If you, like me, laid about like 32.5, 33.5 with Baylor, this was a little bit rough. They get up 41 points with about 8 minutes remaining. That has been the way that my write-ups have been going. And of course, New Orleans shoots north of 40% from three-point range to cover this one. 91-60 the final, as New Orleans might have found something here with Mr. Day Hunter. He comes in, he goes for 18 points, 7 boards, 6 of 10 from three-point range, but for Baylor, a nice easy win overall for them. No Chad Omier, 12 points, 13 rebounds. Jaden Nunn, he was able to supply the team with 23 as well. Meet for the Roadrunners, and what was one of the bigger collapses that you're going to find. This was a relative pick'em game, by the way, but for Merrimack, they blow a 13-point lead in the final 3+ minutes. They were up 70-56 with less than 3:30 remaining. they lose by kind of 76-74. For UTSA, they were able to get big-time production out of Primo Spears. He chucks in there 29 points, and for UTSA, they lose the turnover battle by kind of 20-15, but they won the battle on the glass 48-33 with Janavius Smith chipping in there 20 rebounds off the bench. I can't remember the last time I've seen someone get 20 rebounds off the bench in a game that doesn't go to like 5 overtimes, but somehow, someway, he was able to do it. And for Merrimack, he goes just 4 of 17 from three-point range. So that was a rather nutty game, to say the least, and this has been nuts. This has been insane, but it is what we've been seeing in terms of these non-conference tournaments, and what we saw was Appalachian State be able to get the job done over Sam Houston State. This by a count of 66-63, a game that was up, down, all around with Sam Houston State leading at the half. Lamar Wilkerson, he's able to spy the team with 22 points, but Appalachian State, they do a nice job rallying in the second half. They managed to be able to get the job done. Also, NJIT, they will be not a team that goes winless this year. They get their first win of the season, 78-69. They take down Morehead State. If you, like me, had the points with UT Martin, this was a brutal run as well. 78-35, Tennessee, they're able to get the job done as massive favorites. As for UT Martin, they give up the final 11 points of the game in the final 3+ minutes, as Tennessee, with their walk-ons in, are able to get the job done. And for Tennessee, they go on a 20-4 run in the final 7:39 with all their backups in to be able to get it done. As for UT Martin, 12 of 53 from the floor, 6 of 31 from three-point range, and lost the turnover battle 18-11. So very much less than savory there. Less than savory for San Diego State. They lose to Oregon, this by a count of 78-68. For Oregon, they go 10 of 22 from three-point range. TJ Bamba, he was able to give the team 4 of 6 3-point shooting, 22 big points out of him. And Keyshawn Bartholomew off the bench, 16 points, 5 steals. For San Diego State, they win the turnover battle 15-13, but they get absolutely destroyed on glass, 41-24, as Nate Biddle, he had just a little bit of production, 11 points, 9 boards, 2 blocks in this one. So a nice win for them. Also, Canisius, they were able to get a cover. They're still winless, but 72-64, they hang in there against Robert Morris. Auburn right now looking like one of the most dominant teams in all of college basketball. Our good friend Sean Paul will be talking about this a little bit more, but 90-76, they take down Memphis, and Memphis goes 6 of 9 from three-point range in this one. PJ Haggerty, 27 points, 7 rebounds, just 11 turnovers for Memphis, but only 9 for Auburn. Auburn wins the rebound battle 32-26, and Gianni Broom, this guy is cleaning up, and he might be cleaning up some hardware at the end of the year. 21 points, 16 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 blocks. Dylan Cardwell had 18 points, 6 assists. I mean, just unselfish basketball being played here by Auburn. 23 assists on 34 made buckets. Everyone was doing their part for Auburn, so that was big. And we get to the bad beat of the day. I had this on my video TikTok pick miss pick. I had this in my write-ups. That tells you sort of how my luck is going. So if you've had some bad luck in college basketball, oh, trust me, I feel you. I laid 2.5 points with Oklahoma. They went 79-77. This team was up by a score of 73-66 in the final 2 minutes. Even worse, they were up 9 points with 44 seconds remaining. If you want to go even further, I believe that they were up 7 points with 36 seconds remaining, and they get called for 6 men out there on the court with 2 seconds left. That was a technical while they were up by 4 points. Providence drains both free throws, and there goes your -2.5. And if you had +2.5 with Providence, Merry Christmas to you, because man, that was brutal to say the least. As Bryce Hopkins, many people thought he might make his debut. He did not make his debut. South Carolina, they made their debut of being able to cover as a mid-sized favorite, 70-60. They take down Virginia Tech, as this Virginia Tech team. Not great to say the least, 8 of 18 from three-point range, but they lose the rebound battle 37-35, and for South Carolina, fortunately for them, they had Colin Murray Boyles on their side. 16 points, 8 boards, 3 steals, 2 blocks in this one. You also saw a nice win from Incarnate Word, 86-75. They have been quite pesky thus far this season. You had a nice quality cover out of a few bigger underdogs. South Dakota hangs in there against Nebraska. It's by kind of 96-79. That was a spread that was approaching more than that neighborhood, about 22.5. As for South Dakota's Chase Forte was able to give you 20 points. And Connor Essegian, been telling you, this guy's going to bust out at some point off the bench. 6 of 15 from three-point range, 29 big points out of him. For Creighton, they toilet bowl their game against Texas A&M, 77-73. A&M able to get the job done. Creighton was able to control the entirety of the first half and then disappeared to run out of gas. A&M was, by the way, a 3.5 point favorite, and for Creighton, they shoot it relatively well from 3, 13 of 37 from the outside. The Aggies go just 5 of 23 from three-point range, but They win the battle on the glass, 48-37. Ryan Kalkbrenner was the only starter that attempted fewer than 10 field goals. Goes 4 of 5 from the floor, 10 rebounds, 5 blocks, 9 points, but just expect him to take a few more shots. Maybe that's just me. Alabama State, they get a nice quality cover against Cincinnati, 77-59, as you have seen the underdogs really barking in this past week or so. Alabama State at 28.5-point underdog, with Amar Knox being able to put in there 24 points, being able to take Cincinnati to the School of Hard Knocks. And Lindenwood as about a 29-30-point dog. They cover against Missouri, 81-61, with Markeith Browning, the former UW-Milwaukee Panther, being able to give the team 20-plus points. Speaking of UW-Milwaukee, they cover as a double-figure dog, 84-76 final in that one. And you did see as well, Northern Arizona, they have a massive bonsai charge of a win against Houston Christian. Does not cover the closing 3.5, but 74-71 the final, as this was just a complete and utter upchucking by Houston Christian. Houston Christian, they get up in this game by a big amount. They were up 20 in the first half. Elijah Brooks had 15 points, while Northern Arizona, I believe, had 12. So this was a game where you thought that it was lost in the abyss, but no, that's because Northern Arizona was able to rally behind the 20 points of Trent McLaughlin, and it's a Houston Christian team that's quite limited on offense. In this game, they go 5 of 17 from three-point range. So despite the fact that Julian Mackey is able to throw in their 28 points, 29 points from Elijah Brooks, problem was the rest of the team had a whopping 14 points. So that's not great. And for Arizona, they had a whopping 104 points. They absolutely dump trucked Davidson. It's by a count of 104-71 as Davidson. They did have Bobby Durkin go 5 of 10 from 3 for 15 points, but they went 11-34 from three-point range. For Arizona, they made 11 threes as well, but they took just 22 attempts, and for Arizona, they won the battle on the glass 47-31. They do lose the turnover battle. A much better game here from Caleb Love, 20 points, 5 rebounds, 3 of 7 from three-point range, 2 turnovers, and Toby Awaka, 13 points, 10 rebounds of his own. And if you're looking at what we're all getting in college basketball right now, things have become a little bit more even Steven in terms of the overs and the unders. 544 overs of 535 unders, but it has been dogs galore. Dogs are covering 52.3% of games this year, 564, 515, and 15 against the spread. If you just look at the last 7 days in college basketball, underdogs sitting at 53.8%, 203, 174, and 5 against the spread. And over the last 7 days, about as much of a 50-50 split as it gets in terms of overs and unders. 190 unders, 189 overs, and a few pushes as I do this, like I said, with a few games still pending in college basketball. So that's where we're seeing college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Wednesday. Now let's turn it forward to a nice Turkey Day Thursday with one of our good friends, Sean Paul, who does amazing work. Go over at Action Network in the field of 68. By the way, Fresno State looks like they're up now 65-62 on Cal Baptist, as Cal Baptist has completely toilet bowled a double-figure lead within the final 4 minutes by not scoring. So there's that aspect of things, and this game is going to go to overtime, so we don't know how that fared, but what we do know is that we are getting a great chat with our good friend Sean next, right here on Cusco Seats with myself, J.U. Stevenson, now part of the UC Family Podcast. We're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Cusco Seats with myself, Greg Hughes Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man as we've got Sean Paul aboard. Does a tremendous job taking a look at this great game of college basketball over there at both Action Network along with the Field of 68. He does a mid-major show with another one of our good friends, Rocco Miller. Those two guys, they do an absolutely tremendous job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love. Everything from the big of the big teams to the small of the small. He's got you covered there, and to be able to follow Sean on Twitter/X, that is at his first and last name, Sean Paul, and then the word CBB all together, and that's SEAN on Sean. And Sean, always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Greg, as always.
Thank you for joining me, Sean. And Sean, it has been a wild first 3 or so weeks of the season. Just what have you made out of all the action that we've seen? Because it almost feels like every day and every week, it just has its own sort of beat. Like the first few days, we saw a whole bunch of offense, and then we saw the defenses come back to the forefront, and it has really been a crazy season, in my opinion.
I think there's a clear top 3 teams in the country, and I think that's what's really stood out. It's Kansas, who I think is probably the third best of the bunch. It's Auburn, who's clear in a way the best team in the country, and I think just about everybody can come to that consensus at this point. And then Iowa State, who almost beat Auburn, is number 2. And then you have Gonzaga somewhere in that mix, but obviously losing to West Virginia hurts. But they've looked up and down at times this year, especially on the defensive end. Even though they've been a lot better than expected, they still show some stains here and there, but I think Auburn is definitely the best team I've seen by far.
Yep, we saw them be able to win the Maui Invitational. They got the job done in all 3 games, and they really took it to Memphis. And dare I say that G&I Broome needs to have some consideration for the Wooden Award. I don't know if maybe I'm a little bit off base, but I just look at that guy, and he's just such a dominator in terms of what he's doing, both down low, and he's really added versatility since we first saw him over at Morehead State. The way that he's evolved in his game has been amazing.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, for guys like us that have been watching this dude for 5 years, like, he's gotten so much better. At the start of his career at Morehead State, he really wouldn't shoot the ball beyond like 10, 11 feet. And if you remember correctly, like, the only reason that dude was a starter from the jump was because Tyson Claude, who is now at North Carolina playing a bench role, he got hurt. Like, I don't think the plan was ever for Janai Broome to start as a freshman at Morehead State. And then he picked it up when Claude got hurt, and then it's just been full steam ahead. He is the best player in the country. I really don't think it's all that close. You have other guys like Mark Sears and RJ Davis who have largely disappointed so far this year, and that's allowed Broome to really show out. He's the best player on the best team in the country. He's an elite defender. He blocks a ton of shots. He can hit a 3, as we've seen. He's willing to take them. And his touch is probably one of the best I've ever seen for a big man at this level. He's always willing to throw up like a 13-foot floater with his left hand, and not a lot of big men have that kind of touch. A lot of big men struggle to really make a shot like that, but Broome specializes in it, and that's something he's always been good at. He's just such a good player, but it's more than just him. I think the difference with this Auburn team in comparison to last year's Auburn team is, for one, they have a spot-up shooter in Miles Kelly. That's something they didn't have last year. And I trust their guard play a whole lot more because Denver Jones is relied upon less, but he's a good player. And Tahad Pettiford is something they definitely didn't have last year because of his dynamic scoring ability. Aiden Holloway was supposed to be that guy, but he never really picked it up, and obviously he's thriving at Alabama. But it's hard for a freshman to step in and be that kind of guy right away, but Pettiford has really thrived in the 2 biggest games of the season against Iowa State and Houston.
Yeah, Pettiford has been able to do a nice job as a little bit of 6th man coming in off the bench, being able to give that team some nice offense. And the way that I look at this Auburn team, I don't know if you agree/disagree. I call them a little bit of a chameleon. If you need them to be able to win a game with their guards like Denver Jones, Chad Baker-Mazara, maybe that's not their absolute forte, but they're able to do so. You need to go down low to G&I Broome, even Dylan Cardwell, who gives you some nice defense, some nice shot blocking. They're able to do so as well, and I think that that's really the separator for me on this Auburn team.
Oh, for sure, and Dylan Cardwell is the unsung hero in the country, probably. That dude is an absolute dog. He does everything that contributes to winning. He seems to be very much beloved by his teammates, and you look at his stats, like, he's not going to average 20 a game, he's not going to average 10 a game, but he's averaging 3 and 3. He had 18 points and 6 assists today, and a lot of the things that came from those assists were offensive rebounds. He had 2 huge offensive rebounds that led directly to 3-pointers for Auburn on back-to-back possessions. Like, this dude is just a great overall player, and the versatility from Broome now allows for him and Cardwell to play together. So that's just such a dynamic duo. And then you have other pieces like Chris Moore and Chaney Johnson, just so many big, long, athletic wings who really defend and play hard.
Yep, absolutely. It's been incredible what we've seen out of them. As Sean Paul, he does a tremendous job over at the Field of 68 along with Action Network. Joining me right here on Cuss Hoops, and we saw some big-time stunners in terms of the battle for Atlantis yesterday. As you saw West Virginia be able to get the job done, an absolutely massive win for them. And just what do you make out of this field in general in the battle for Atlantis? Because I do think that there's going to be a lot of fun games for that event that's going to be coming up for Thursday, and I think that it's a star-studded field with a lot of surprises thus far.
Honestly, nothing's more aggravating to me as someone who loves college basketball than seeing a team who just entirely gives up, and that's really what I saw from Indiana. I think they really quit on this game. They did not seem to be energized once they got down by 15, 17 points. They were not defending at all. They were turning the ball over left and right. Mike Woodson needs to have that room. He should have a team meeting today and really talk about what happened out there today, because honestly, it was a complete embarrassment. This Indiana team had a lot of NIL dollars funneled into it, of course, and that's how you need to win these days. But if you aren't going to show the effort, I don't know how you can show those donors that you're supposed to, win a bunch of games if you're not going to show that kind of effort. Cannon Carlisle was bad. Miles Rice was bad. They didn't seem to have any plan besides just driving to the basket and not feeding the big men at first, which really led to a lot of problems because that's the only way they were getting buckets on Louisville at first. This team still can't really shoot. Mackenzie Mbako didn't have a very good game. He didn't seem to be a huge part of the game plan, but it was an effort thing for me. They quit on this game, and I hate saying that about college basketball teams because I think largely a lot of these players do try, and they have a lot of effort, but I'm not going to lie when I see the exact opposite of that, and that's exactly what Indiana did. I really hope they take a look in the mirror and come out with a better effort and intensity because today was just a terrible effort.
Yep, absolutely. That was not great to say the least. And Louisville is going to be facing off against West Virginia on Thursday. As of right now, we have no idea what the spread on that game is going to be or anything. But just how do you take a look at that matchup? A pair of first-year coaches that I thought were good hires from the jump. And with Louisville, you can say what you want about Indiana, but they really played well yesterday. And for West Virginia, being able to cut out that overtime win against Gonzaga, that tells me a lot about where this West Virginia team is at. And it feels like they play some good positionless basketball.
Yeah, Ken Palm has it as Louisville favored by 3, so I'd imagine it's somewhere in that 3 to 4 range in favor of the Cardinal. But what I saw from West Virginia was they have such a good dynamic duo between Von Small and Tucker DeVries that if those two go off, they can win just about any game that they play. But obviously, that's a lot easier said than done. They need the others like Amani Hansberry and Jonathan Powell and Sincere Harris. They need all those guys to continue to play well. And if that happens, they will have a good chance to beat Louisville. But Louisville really got it going. Even though Indiana didn't show a lot of effort, I think we saw a lot of intensity from that Louisville team, and that was awesome to see. Chucky Hepburn, he was such a difference maker. 7 steals. He almost had a triple-double with steals, assists, and points, 16, 10, and 7. He was great, and they need him to continue to being great. This team can shoot it, obviously. I'd like to see them get to the free throw line a little bit more. They only did it 7 times against Indiana. That's not something that they have to do, obviously, because they beat Indiana handily, but I want to see them drive a little bit more. I know that's not what Pat Kelsey loves to do, but the shots aren't going to fall every night. So I'd love to see Terrence Edwards get a little more aggressive like he was at James Madison. He only had 6 shots in this game. I think they need him to be a little bit more of an alpha than he was. I'd like to see him be more of an offensive focal point for this team.
Yep, absolutely. And then on the flip side for Gonzaga, how do you take a look at this team right now? Because we saw them night number 1 be able to completely bludgeon Baylor. They announced themselves as one of the best teams in all of college basketball. But since then, it's been up and down. They knock off Long Beach State and UMass Lowell by 100 million billions points. But as we know, those are programs that they should be taking down very easily. They had that close call against Arizona State. And then against West Virginia, they just couldn't execute down the stretch while West Virginia did.
I mean, I think the thing I'm trying to figure out is what is Graham Ike? Is he going to be the guy that contended for WCC Player of the Year last year, or is he slowly getting into Mark Few's doghouse? Because he played 14 minutes against West Virginia because he was 1 for 6 from the field and he wasn't defending great. But behind him, Braden Huff is one of the more efficient offensive bigs in the country, but he struggles defensively. So Mark Few really has to find out what the proper combination is, because they did get beat up defensively against this West Virginia team, and largely it was Sincere Harris, but pick and rolls between him and Hansberry, that kind of killed the Gonzaga a little bit at times. They need to figure out what the proper combination is, because they don't really have a guy other than Ben Gray, because he can defend pick and rolls a little bit, though, that is very good at defending, though, so they can get beat up a little bit by that. And it seemed like the pace was just a little bit more in favor of West Virginia, because we know about Gonzaga. They can take the ball off a misser and make, and they're going down the court in about 8 seconds, and they can get a layup if the other team is not paying attention. They did that countless times against Baylor. They did that against San Diego State, who's typically great at stopping things like that. They just need to find their identity on the defensive end. They've been a lot better defensively than I think most expected. They didn't shoot the ball very well from inside the arc in this game either, but if they figure out how to be a really good defensive team along with a very efficient offense, and they weren't very efficient offensively in this game, then they're going to be the top 3 team that they were coming into today. But Khalif Battle, he had a good game, but besides him, it wasn't a ton of scoring. So we need to see what this Gonzaga team can really be on both ends of the floor, but I still think they're a great team.
Yep, I think so as well. Like you said with Graham Ike, it's been very surprising as he's been only averaging about like 17 to 18 minutes all season long as well. So his usage going to be something very much to note, as Sean Paula does great work over at the Field of 68 is showing me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And then I think that this one is so interesting as well, with Illinois being a 2.5-point favorite against Arkansas. Both of these teams coming off of just completely bludgeoning Maryland Eastern Shore. But that said, how do you take a look at this matchup with an Arkansas team that seems to be coming into their own? And for Illinois, it just feels like they've got so much, shall we say, versatility with regards to this team, with Will Riley being able to step up.
This offense is a bit of a mess for Arkansas. I just don't know how this offense works if Janelle Davis isn't being the guy that he was supposed to be coming over from FAU, and maybe he got it going a little bit against Maryland Eastern Shore. Just about everybody had it going against Maryland Eastern Shore, so I'm not sure how much stock I'm taking in that, but he hit 4 threes, which is impressive because he's been open a lot. Like in that, their second biggest game of the year, that was against Baylor. Yeah, against Baylor. He had so many open corner threes and probably missed 3 or 4 wide open corner threes that would have changed the outlook of that game. if he's able to make those shots consistently, that makes him and this team a lot more dangerous because we know how dynamic of a driver that dude is. And the one question about this Arkansas team is, do they have enough shooting? And if he's able to shoot the ball, that opens up the floor for a Duthiero, who's really been their best player this year because he's not really a shooter. DJ Wagner, because he's not really a shooter. Boogie Fland, who is a really good shooter, but he's really the only guy other than Big Z who can shoot it. And Carter Knox, like he's 4 for 23 from 3. Davis is shooting 30% from 3 now. They just need another guard to be able to shoot the basketball, and pretty much everybody on that team wants to do the same thing other than Fland, which is just straight line drive to the basket, and teams are going to play zone on them and do things like that until they figure out how to shoot the basketball. But similarly, the issue for this Illinois team is that they aren't a very good defensive team. Their defensive efficiency is really good, but in some of their biggest games of the year, which was against Alabama, they really came up looking disappointing on that end of the floor. I really don't have a great feel for this game because Illinois' offense, I mean, they dominated Little Rock, and I think that's part of why their defensive efficiency is so good, because they held Maryland Eastern Shore to 40 and Little Rock to 34. That is impressive. I'm not going to hate on that, but a lot of it's Kylan Boswell related, I think, as he's a great on-ball defender, as we saw against Mark Sears. But also, we haven't seen Kasparis Jackie-Shonis be great offensively in big-time games, like against Alabama. He kind of struggled. He was a lot more aggressive in that game against Little Rock. He had 21 points, got to the foul line a ton, but he still only attempted 9 shots. He needs to be the alpha for that offense if they're going to be an elite offense. And they need Ben Humbrickhouse to be more than a guy who just stands in the corner and shoots threes, because he can be more than that. So I think a lot of figuring out what this Illinois team is figuring out the roles for a bunch of different guys, which is to be expected because the entire starting 5 wasn't on this roster last year. Will Riley wasn't on this roster. Morez Johnson wasn't on this roster. The only main rotation piece who was Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn. So I think the team will figure out as time goes how the pecking order for scoring goes, but I think Jackie Shonis has to be the guy offensively, and Will Riley, obviously coming off the bench, he's not going to be able to start the game and have a bunch of points, but I think those need to be the 1 and 2 for Illinois' offense. Illinois doesn't turn the ball over very much, and they're very careful with their ball handlers because Jackie Shonis and Boswell can really handle it. So I think that plays into their favor. I think they'll win this game because Arkansas is still searching offensively. If they can't force turnovers and make this a track meet, then I think Arkansas is in trouble.
Yep, Arkansas, it's a interesting unit to say the least, as they've also been dealing with a lot of injuries as well. So I will say that as well, but I want to see a little bit more of DJ Wagner as well. Just has not lived up to his billing since he came out as a top 10 recruit last season as well. If he's able to find a little bit more, that's going to be big for this Arkansas team as well. And Sean, we do have ourselves a lot of great feasting that is going to be happening on Thanksgiving. If you're, like myself, going to be wanting to take a nap during the Giants versus Cowboys game, there's plenty of great college basketball. Is there anything in particular that you're taking a look at? Because we already laid out a few games. Any other ones that are really catching your attention?
You know, one game I'm kind of interested to see, and not from a standpoint of these are going to be tournament teams per se, but I think Wichita State and Minnesota early in the day is going to be an interesting one because Minnesota's been pretty bad. I mean, they have not had a lot of games where they're blowing teams out. Their offense has really struggled so far this year. But I like watching Dawson Garcia. I think he's a really good player. They've dealt with some injuries, but Lukai Patterson, he hasn't done a great job replacing Elijah Hawkins, so I think this team has a lot to figure out. But Wichita State slowly is 72nd in KenPom. They had a big win over St. Louis by 25 points. This is going to be their biggest test so far this year. So I want to see if the Shockers are for real this year under Paul Mills or if they've benefited from a soft schedule.
Yep, I think that is going to be an interesting one to look at with a Minnesota team that's one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball in terms of their pace, and a Wichita State that is very much looking to get up and down as well. And those are some of the most fun games that we get. And Sean, we've got ourselves some amazing Thanksgiving action that's going to be happening. I know you do such a great work on so many different fronts, so let the good people at home know it's on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at SeanPaulCBB, and all my content, you'll at least get a link to it over there.
Absolutely. Sean does a tremendous job taking a look at this great sport, and every single time he joins me, lends such amazing insight. So big thanks to Sean for joining me on Cuts Hoops, now part of the VC Family Podcast. And coming next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this Thanksgiving Thursday as we hit some bank shots. When I was asked by Uncommon Goods to do this read, I felt like, man, I am the perfect guy for this one, because with Uncommon Goods, they scour the globe for original, handmade, remarkable things. Somehow, some way, you know it's going to be perfect, and you're going to be supporting some of the little guys. And why I'm so perfect for it is, for those of you guys that watch everything that I do with my TikTok videos on the old Twitter/X, you'll notice I'm wearing all these low/mid-major college basketball jerseys, and Uncommon Goods, they're sort of like that for all of your goods for this upcoming season. They find you a nice variety of products. They're high quality, they're unique, oftentimes handmade. You're supporting a lot of, shall we say, smaller artists as well, and you're able to just find a home for a lot of different various things that if you're trying to look online thinking, man, where can I find this very unique thing? Uncommon Goods, they're going to be able to find that for you, and you're able to get 15% off your next gift by going to uncommongoods.com/coast. That is uncommongoods.com/coast, COAST. That gives you 15% off. Do not miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods, we're all out of the ordinary. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Heaps with myself, Greg Heaps Peterson, now part of the Beeson Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Sean Paul, who does such great work over at the Field of 68. Coupled with that, he does a great job over at Action Network, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights. Did so once again today, so big thanks to Sean for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday, this Thanksgiving Thursday, as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GNN_D1, and we are going to be going in the Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we pretty much go in time order in this one in terms of games not involving multi-team events, and then it is going to be in the order that we do have these multi-team events, as there's no games on the extra games board, so you'll get your hodgepodge of games to start with, and then the ESPN Invitational, Battle for Atlantis, the Children's Invitational, the AccuSure Invitational, NIT Tip-Off, Arizona Tip-Off, AccuSure Classic. Those are the order of the multi-team events. And first two games, they're off the board since these two teams played yesterday. 771, 772 on the card. It is UT Arlington, and they're playing against Rhode Island. This is from Florida State College, so this game is off the board, but I said I've got my handicap. Willing to lay up to 5 with Rhode Island, 6 or more, taking those points with UT Arlington. Made my total to wear a 161 or less. I mean, on the over 162 or higher, the under. You've got a UT Arlington team that is playing at one of the top 30 paces in terms of total possessions in all of college basketball. And this is a Rhode Island team that has really been able to assert their offense recently as well. They bring back Sebastian Thomas after he was with the program 2 seasons ago. Last year goes to Albany. He has 19 points per game, and he has been able to reassert himself here as the top scorer for Rhode Island this year, as he's one of 4 guys that are giving you at least 13 points per contest. Javante Brown, the 7-footer, has been able to give you 13 points, 6 boards. David Green has been able to give 15 points, 5.5 rebounds for a Rhode Island team that's shooting about 38% from 3-point range. So they've been able to do a nice job there. David Fuchs is giving you 7 boards per game, and that's going to be tough for UT Arlington. They just don't have a lot of size. Darius Burford has been the top rebounder for the team, giving you about 6 to 6.5 rebounds per game, and he's able to supply the team with about 9 to 10 points per game, shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range. Love what I'm seeing out of Jaden Wells, who's been able to slide the team with 16 points. This is a good 3-point shooting, but just not a lot of size in general. Brody Robinson, he's come in as a guy that's able to dole out 4 assists per game after he was over at Chattanooga 2 seasons ago. But for UT Arlington, this is a team that is very much based around their backcourt. They've got Troy Hoopseed, who's able to give you a few rebounds as well. Would like to see a little bit more out of him, but for this UT Arlington team, they do need to reel it in terms of 14-plus turnovers per game. It was a big kryptonite for them last season. Now, the good news is they face off against a Rhode Island team that was one of the worst in all of college basketball, generating turnovers last year. They've been better at that this year, but it's still not an amazing team at being able to exploit the weakness that you've got for UT Arlington. I do think that this is going to be an up-and-down game. And for Rhode Island, they're a better team on the glass. I don't know if they're necessarily too amazing on the glass. And for UT Arlington, they have been a relatively good shooting team. And I do expect a little bit of regression with this Rhode Island team as well. So 5 or less, I'm willing to lay with Rhode Island. 6 or more, I'm going to be willing to take those points. And then with regards to this total, I'm going to be setting mine to where a 161 or less, I'm in on the over. A 162 or higher, I'm going to be in on that total under, as we go to 773, 774, on the card. It is Utah Valley. They're going to be playing against North Dakota State. No numbers up on this game, but made Utah Valley the now 3.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 3 with them. 4 or more going to be taking those points with North Dakota State. And then set my total to where 143 or less, I'm in on the over. A 144 or higher, I'm going to be in on that total under for this Utah Valley team. A very nice effort yesterday against Sanford, and I'm just really starting to warm up on them in general. A little bit of a transitionary year last year after they lost Mark Madsen, but this is a team that was once again pretty rock solid on defense. They're doing a great job with having both of the Wellings be able to come in as well. Carter and Hayden Welling are a pair of guys that both stand north of 6'8". Both of these guys are able to give you some good rebounding and are able to pop it from 3-point range. Carter Welling has been more of your main man. He has been the guy that's been in the starting rotation, entered into yesterday. 15 points, 7 boards on 60% 3-point shooting. I do think that that's going to be going southward just a little bit, but he's been able to do a nice job there. And then you've been able to get really good versatility on Dominic Nelson. Entered into yesterday with north of 14 points and 7 boards per contest at 6'5". Has not really popped it well from 3-point range, but overall, this is a team that's doing a really good job in terms of their offensive efficiency. They do a nice job in terms of being efficient on defense. Now, we'll say they need to reel in the turnovers a little bit. This team has been committing 15-plus turnovers per contest, so that's a little bit of an issue that you've got. But they do go up against a North Dakota State team as one of the worst teams in all of college basketball at being able to generate turnovers themselves. So this is a case where the biggest weakness of Utah Valley probably not going to be exposed here. And for North Dakota State, Jakari White has been able to do a really good job supplying the team with north of 18 points per contest. Overall this season, they're only shooting about 32.5% from 3-point range, at the very least going to yesterday. Last year, they were a 37.5% 3-point shooting team, so I think that they're going to be very strong on the offensive side of things, but this is always a team that's consistently well outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. North Dakota State very much with the propensity to not give you a lot of second chances on the boards, and they themselves last year allowed opponents to shoot about 37% from 3-point range, so a team throughout time that has been very efficient on the offensive end, a team that's been very inefficient on the defensive side of things. I just don't think that they stand too much of a chance down low. They've got one guy that really gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, and Noah Federson, who is able to pop threes. He's giving you about 6 rebounds, 8.5 points per game, at the very least going to yesterday, more like 9 points per game now. But I think that Trevin Leonard, who's able to give you 5 assists per game for Utah Valley, a little bit of better facilitator than what you've got for North Dakota State with Brendan Watkins with about 3 assists per contest as well. So this is a line where I'm willing to lay up to 3 with Utah Valley, 4 or more. Taking the points with North Dakota State, I do think that this is going to be a lower tempo game, 143 or less, and on the over 144 or higher, the under. This is 775, 776 on the card. You got Illinois and Arkansas. They are going to be doing battle out there at the T-Mobile Center, and for Illinois, they're a 2.5 point favorite. Total on this game between 153 to 154, and with Illinois, set them as a 1-point favorite. Being able to get 2+, I'm going to take those points with Arkansas. I think that this is your ultimate toss-up game, and I was very much taking the approach of wanting to be able to put myself on the side of the underdog in this one, and I do think that for Illinois, they do have a lot of versatility. You have to love what you've been seeing out of Will Riley, who's been able to give you 17 points, 5+ boards per contest, and Tomislav Ivicic has been able to give you 8.5 rebounds, some block shots. He's able to pop it from 3-point range, but all of a sudden the Arkansas offense, it does look to be coming into its own. Needs to cut down on the turnovers, about 12.5 turnovers per contest, but Boogie Fland, he has been one of the best freshmen in all of college basketball. 2 steals, 5.5 assists, 17 points per game while shooting 48% from 3-point range. I think that John L. Davis is going to be able to pick it up as well. Last year at FAU, he was averaging north of 17 points per contest. This year, just 9.5 points per game, but the real X factor here, can you get DJ Wagner going? A former top 10 recruit is averaging just 9 points. It's been a little bit hot and cold in terms of his offensive play. You've seen Trayvon Brazil be a little bit banged up on when he's been out there on the court. Hasn't necessarily given you a ton, so that's something that you do want to be watching out for, and just his status in general, but also been able to get a little bit more now out of Carter Knox. Knox is a true freshman that had a little bit of a coming out party against Maryland Eastern Shore, 21 points, 6 boards in 24 minutes, so he's another nice weapon that this team is able to utilize, and we were talking about it with Sean Paul. Gasparis, Jakanuskis, he's been able to do a nice job with his overall versatility. Not necessarily the score than a lot of people expected, about 12 points per game, which is still fine, but he's got way more versatility than I expected. 6 boards, 6.3 assists per contest. This for an Illinois team that overall this season has been able to shoot only about 33% from 3-point range. Think that that should be going northward just a little bit, but did set my total out of 153 because I've noticed with this Coach Calipari team, unlike what he did over at Kentucky last season, guys are really digging in. They're really getting after it defensively, and this is an Southern Illinois team that, say what you will about them, they've given up 58 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. So I do think that this total coming downward, it is the correct move, as this total started out at 154. Here at the 154, 153.5, I'm in on the under. And with regards to the spread, being able to get north of 1 with Arkansas, I'm going to take the 2.5 that I'm seeing right now. 777, 778 on the betting board. This is Kennesaw State. We give our O to Lane Kiffin. Go Owls, says they're going to be playing against UC Irvine. Zot. The Anteaters do find themselves as 8.5 to 9-point favorites. Total on this game, it is 157.5. Set Irvine as a 9.5-point favorite. As long as we're able to keep it single digits, I'm going to be willing to lay with UC Irvine, a team that just time and time again, they get after it defensively, and they've been rock solid on offense. This is also going to be from Visit Lethbridge.com Arena. This is out there in the country of Canada, so about as true of a neutral court game as you can get. But for Kennesaw State, I just don't think that they've got the size and versatility to be able to match up with Bent Lutgen, the 7'1" gentleman from Germany, who's able to give you 17 points, 10 boards. He's able to pop it from 3. That's not necessarily his forte, but it's a career about 28% 3-point shooter. Simeon Cotto, he might be the best overall facilitator out there on the floor. He's on the side of Kennesaw State, 3.5 assists, shooting 43% from 3 for a Kennesaw team that's currently shooting 37% from the outside, but they're just a little bit undisciplined with the ball. They play a little bit too fast for their own good, in my opinion. About 14 turnovers per game. They're going to have a tough time down low with their main rebounder being Braden Liu, who's a 6'8" freshman who's been able to step up in a good way. He's been able to give you about 7.5 boards per contrast, and then you've got Andre Woolley, who's been able to give you about 5 boards, double-figure amount of points per game, but this UC Irvine team, just so much versatility. 6'6" Devin Tillis is able to give you 14.5 points, 8.5 boards, currently shooting 75% from 3-point range. Certainly, that should be going downward, but love the fact that they pick up Miles Shea as well. He was over at Chattanooga a season ago. He's a part-time starter for them. He's been able to give this team a little bit of 3-point shooting pop. He gives you multiple assists per game, which is big because they lose their main facilitator from last season in Pierre Cockrell. So you've been seeing Justin Owen having to take on the onus of being able to facilitate the offense, and has been able to do a good job of it. Last year was a little bit more of an off-the-ball guy, now giving you 3.5 assists, 13.5 points, and has not seen a diminishment at all in his 3-point shooting. He's currently shooting 40% from the outside. This is an Irvine team that year in and year out, they're typically a top 10 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis away from home. And Irvine has been cranking up their tempo a little bit more here in recent years, but I do think that they are going to be able to get this game really played at their little bit more of a slow and controlled style. I do think that they find a way to be able to knock off this Kennesaw team by a pretty healthy margin. At 9 or less, I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Kennesaw State. I did set my total 155.5. I'm in on the under. 779, 780 on the betting board. Also out there in Canada, Towson and Kent State do battle. Kent State find themselves as between a pick'em to a 1-point favorite. Thought on this game is 131, and think that the wrong team is favored. I said Towson as a 1.5-point favorite. I like them outright on the money line. Towson, I believe, is the better defensive team in this one, and for Towson, they always do a tremendous job getting things all slowed down, being a notorious bottom 50 team in terms of total possessions per game. And Kent State, they're actually a team that they like to crank up the tempo just a little bit more. Von Cameron Davis has been able to supply the team with 16 points per contest, and you've also been able to get some relatively good production out of Jalen Sullinger. He's been able to shoot 43.5% from 3, but his volume has dipped a little bit from a season ago, giving you about 10.5 points per game. Sion Medley, it's going to be interesting to see how he's going to be able to contribute to this offense because he's not much of a scorer, but is a pretty good facilitator. Meanwhile, for the Towson team, you've seen a few guys be able to step up in the backcourt. Dylan Williamson is out giving you 14 points per contest along Tyler Tejada, though Tejada has been dealing with a little bit of an injury. Has already missed 3 games thus far this season, and would be a little bit surprised if he suits it up at all this weekend. But Nenda Tark, just a stat sheet sufferer, guy that was, I believe, 3 seasons ago in the top 5 in terms of steals on a per-game basis. You've been able to get also 47.5% 3-point shooting out of Moas Solomon, who's saying 6'6". He last season was a part-time starter for the team that has been able to give you a lot of versatility at about 6'6". It's a Towson team that overall the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. When it comes to a rebounding approach, you could use a little bit more out of Messiah Jones, who came over from Wofford a few seasons ago, but team is rough and tumble on defense. They take care of the ball with only turning the ball over about 9.5 times per game. I do think that they're going to do the little things to get the job done against a Kent State team that they themselves have been rediscovering their defense. Gave up just 52 points a few nights ago against Cleveland State, but this is a Towson unit that ever since I came against South Carolina has allowed 64 or fewer to some pretty up-tempo teams like James Madison and Morgan State. So do like Towson to be able to get their style and to be able to get the job done in this one. So I am liking the money line in this one for Towson, and with regards to this total, I set mine at a 131.5, as I do think that this is going to be a slow grinder of a game, but I do think that this is also going to have the propensity to be close enough to be able to give you some late game following as well. So here at the 131, it's the absolute highest I'd be willing to take it over on, but we'll be willing to take a 131 over to go along that money line of Towson. 781, 782 on the betting board. It is Wichita State. They're playing against Minnesota. This from the great state of Florida, and right now with Wichita State, you find them as a 1.5 to a 2-point favorite. Totals between 136 to 137, and with Wichita State, I did set them as a favorite more in that neighborhood of 3 points. So I'm going to be willing to lay up to 2.5 with Minnesota. They play at one of the slowest paces in all of college basketball, ranking outside the top 330 with that regard. Meanwhile, Wichita State, they're a top 50 team with regards to total possessions per game. So it's a good old situation of something's got to give for Wichita State when Paul Mills is at his best and when he's able to get the most out of it. Seems like he did at Oral Roberts a few seasons ago. They are teams that shoot it really well from three, and they're not quite where you'd want it to be if you're Paul Mills, but Jalen Hill has been able to be a nice cog in the backcourt, giving the team 5 boards, 5 assists, 17.5 points per contest. Overall, the team is shooting just 30% from three, but they've been able to take really good care of the ball. When he turned the ball over a little bit north of 9 times per contest, Corey Washington, who comes over from St. Peter's, has been able to give the team a lot of defensive punch as well. It's 14 points per contest. Could use a bit more out of Xavier Bell, but Quincy Ballard, he's a good shot blocker down low as well. That I think that Minnesota's going to have a tough time matching up with. Minnesota's going to have the most dominant player out there on the floor, as you've had Dawson Garcia supply the team with 8 boards, 23 points per contest, but nobody else on the team is giving you double figures, and they've been dealing with Mark Mitchell, dealing with a little bit of an injury. He's missed each of the last 4 games, should be out once again. You have yet to see Tyler Cochran take the floor as well, so that's been a big giant issue. One night it'll be like Parker Fox that steps up for the team. The next night you'll be able to get a little bit of something out of Frank Mitchell, but he hasn't been able to give you a ton in the scoring department. Does give you about 5 rebounds per game, and that's a big reason why Minnesota has been a little bit of a slower, grimier team with Lucille Patterson taking over that point guard spot. He's been able to give you about 3.5 assists per contest, and you do have Parker Fox, who is shooting 50% from 3-point range, but aside from Dawson Garcia, there's just not a lot there, and even though Minnesota is a better player in this game, I think that Wichita State has a more cohesive team, and they've been more efficient with regards to the way that they've been able to play. So this is a circumstance where I do like Wichita State in this spot, though I do think that it's going to be a bit of a slower game. So I told 135, I like the under, and I do like Wichita State will lay up to 2.5 there. 783, 784 on the betting board. This will be a game that makes my write-up as Wake Forest. They're going to be playing against Florida. Florida opens up as a 9.5 point favorite. I wrote this up when this was closer to 9. Now they are down to a 7-point favorite. Totals between 150.5 to a 151, and with Wake Forest, I set them as an underdog of 6 points. So if the line is zipped a little bit, I do still like Wake Forest to be able to cover this game. Now this is going to be out there in the lovely state of Florida, but you do have a Gators bunch that they still leave a little bit of something to be desired on defense. Last year they were outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they've been much better thus far this season, as they have now given up 74 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games. So that's marked improvement from where they were a season ago, and they have been able to get to 80 plus on the regular every single game thus far this season. But I do think that Wake Forest is going to be able to do a good job on the glass with Trayvon Spillers coming on over from Appalachian State. He supplied the team with 8.5 rebounds per game. You could use a little bit more in terms of what you're able to get out of Efton Reed. 8.6 boards. He's going to be able to give you a block or 2 as well, but it's really up to Hunter Sallis to be able to his 3-point shooting, and I do think that he's going to be able to do so. Wake Forest, a top 45 team in the country last year in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage. Currently, they are shooting as collective just 29.1% from 3-point range, but Sallis still giving you 19 points despite the fact that he's been struggling from 3. And Cameron Hildreth, he just gives you a bit of everything. 1.5 steals, 4 assists, 5 boards, 11 points per game. I love what he's able to bring to the table. And then for Florida on the flip side, you've been able to have the backcourt step up for the team with Elijah Martin now being your do-it-all sort of guy. 16.5 points, 6 boards, really takes the load off of Will Richard and Walter Clayton, but both of those guys still combining for about 30 points per contest. It's not an amazing 3-point shooting team for Florida. They only shot about 33% from distance last season with largely the same backcourt. They're shooting about 31.5% from the outside this season, but it should be seeing a little bit of a step up moving forward, as Urban Klavstar is now back in the fold after he was dealing with some eligibility issues towards the beginning of the season. And this is going to be a Florida team that's going to be rock solid down low as well. Sam Alexis is able to give you 5 boards. Alex Condon, 6.5 rebounds per game. And as a matter of fact, out of your top 6 scorers, all but one of them have been able to give you at least 5 rebounds per game. And you've gotten some under the radar contribution out of Ruben Chinilu. Hopefully I said that correctly. 5.5 points, 5.5 boards per contest as well, but do think that Wake Forest going to be able to hold in there and is going to see a little bit of a tick up with regards to their three-point shooting. Should be a little bit of a harebrained and a frenetic game as well. So a write-up that I did was taking the points with Wake Forest, and I did set my total at a 158 as well. So seeing the 150.5 to a 151, also in on this total over. 785, 786 on the betting board. It is Louisville, and they're going to be playing against West Virginia. West Virginia opened up as a 1.5 point favorite against Louisville. Now this has flipped to them being a 1 point underdog, and the total on this game is 150.5. Exactly the way that I thought it was going to flip. I did a write-up of Louisville on the money line when I wrote this up, and I had said I felt like Louisville should have been closer to about a 5.5 point favorite. So I am in full agreement with this, and if you're laying like 1.5 points with Louisville, still very much plenty of value here, as I do think that for Louisville, they are going to be able to find a way to get it through this West Virginia team that had to go to overtime yesterday against Gonzaga. They don't have a lot of depth. They only have one guy coming off the bench that gave you north of 8 minutes, and for West Virginia, it was a great effort that they showed yesterday. I like the backcourt of this team. Javon Small, he's able to come up big. Lots of versatility with him. He's able to supply you with about 16.5 points per contest. He's throwing in there about 4 boards, 4 assists. He's able to do a lot of good things, but you just don't have a lot down low for this team as well. I do think that should see Keyshawn Pryor, you can see about 6.5 or so rebounds per game to be able to win the battle down low. And additionally, I do think that the 5 to 6 rebounds that you get out of James Scott as well, going to be big. He's at 6'11", gives you some nice versatility. Rain Smith, he's been the top scorer, shooting north of 40% from 3-point range, but you've got Jacoby Keedy out there in the backcourt. Chucky Hepburn has really been that main facilitator. Just lots of weapons for a Louisville team that is currently missing Corin Johnson. That's a little bit of a loss for them, but they've been just fine without him. And Louisville entered into yesterday shooting just 29.5% from 3. You know that these guys are much better shooters than that, and you've got a West Virginia team that got Amari Hansberry, who's able to give you about 7.5 or so rebounds per game. I like his game. And then the versatility that you've got out of Tucker DeVries. He's been able to log for the team 13 plus points, 5 boards, 2.5 assists. That's very big, along with Jonathan Boom Boom Powell as a freshman stepping up, giving the team double figures off the bench. But with West Virginia, I do have my question marks in terms of how they're going to be able to generate turnovers on this Louisville team. I do think that with every passing game, Louisville is just being able to gain more and more chemistry in general. It's a West Virginia team that has been able to do a pretty supreme job defensively themselves. They give up quite a few points, but that was in overtime yesterday. But I do think that Louisville going to be able to speed up this game, and they're going to be able to sink some shots. My write-up is going to be on Louisville, and I'm willing to take them pretty much up to a 5. I set them as a 5.5 point favorite, and made my total 155.5. I'm also in on this total over. 787, 788 on the betting board. Indiana is going to be taking on Gonzaga. Right now, we've got an opener at Circa with right now Indiana find themselves as a 10-point underdog, and total on this game is 154.5. I'm willing to take the 10 with Indiana. I did set them as a underdog of 8 points for Gonzaga. We were mentioning it with our good friend in Sean Paul. What are you going to be able to get out of Graham Ike moving forward, as that's been a little bit less than savory for them recently, as he was only able to play 14 minutes out there yesterday. We've been able to get some good production out of Michael Ajayi, who comes in as a Pepperdine transfer. He's been able to log 5 plus rebounds per game. Last year shot north of 45% from 3. Should see a little bit of a fall off there, and he still have a north of 5-to-1 assist to turnover ratio out of Ryan Nembhard as well. He's been able to do a nice job with the ball, and he shot just 1 of 10 yesterday. We should be seeing that go quite a bit northward, but this is also a Gonzaga unit that it does feel like they need to find a little bit more of their identity down low. Brandon Huff, he was able to come in off the bench for 19 points yesterday. Dusty Stromer has been able to come on a little bit stronger as a 3-point shooter, but for Indiana, I fully expect them to play much better than they did a day ago. For this Indiana team, you just have so much down low, with Ike being a bit of a question mark. That's big because Umar Ball was able to average darn near a double-double for this unit. Mackenzie Mbakpo entered into yesterday with 18.5 points. You knew that his 53% 3-point shooting was going to be going downward, but Trey Galloway has been able to do out some relatively good offense as well. Not giving you really anything in terms of the scoring department, but has been able to dish out more than 4 assists per contest while turning the ball over less than 2.5 times per game. So that's able to keep Indiana very efficient in the backcourt. Miles Rice has become a nice 15-point per game scorer. Once again, not a supreme shooter. He entered into yesterday shooting 46% from the outside, but right now, the main question mark is the ancillary pieces. Guys like a Luke Goody, Cam Carlisle, these guys that just have not been able to give you a ton. Can they be able to step up? Because you've also been able to get right around about 8 points per contest out of Tucker at the forward spot as well. So he's been able to do a nice job for this Indiana unit. And I do think that when it's all said and done, with Malik Renew also being able to give you a bit down low, also having a bit of versatility, that Indiana finds a way to be able to cover this game. It is a line where I set mine at an 8, so I'm going to be willing to take the 10 here with Indiana. And with regards to the total, I set mine at a 156. You've got a Gonzaga team that at their core, they're looking to play up tempo. They're a little bit better defensively this year than they have been in the past, but you've also got an Indiana team that's looking to crank up that tempo as well. So in on the over, and I am in on the points with Indiana, 789, 790 on the betting board. It is Arizona and Oklahoma doing battle in the battle for Atlantis. No numbers currently up on this game, but I set my handicap to where I'm willing to lay up to 5 points with Arizona, 6 or more, taking those points with Oklahoma, and then 155 or less in on the over, 156 or higher. The under with this Arizona unit, it's a team that I think is going to be able to do a nice job with regards to their offensive sets, but they now go up against an Oklahoma team that has been pickpocketing all season long. For Oklahoma, top 20 team in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, they need to ensure that they're leaving only 5 guys out there on the court rather than 6. Anyone who had that yesterday, you know exactly what I'm talking about, but I do like what I'm seeing from this Oklahoma team who gets back Bryson Gudine. He was back out there on the floor yesterday after 2 seasons ago over at Fairfield. He was north of a 40% three-point shooter. Additionally, for this Oklahoma team, been able to get a lot out of Jalen Moore, who has been able to give you more. He's supplying the team with 7+ rebounds per game, and Oklahoma has become one of the best rebound rate teams in all of college basketball, with he, along with Sam Godwin, doing a tremendous job down low. Godwin has been able to give you 10+ rebounds per contest as well, but then you've got on the flip side a Arizona team that just felt like they were able to take out their frustrations yesterday against Davidson after they had played so poorly 48 hours, 72 hours ago or so against Duke. And when it comes to this unit, it's just all about Caleb Love. What are you going to be able to get out of him? Are you going to get good Caleb Love? Are you going to get bad Caleb Love? Or are you going to get somewhere in between Caleb Love? And you just never know there. You saw the very good Caleb Love yesterday as he was able to supply the team with a bunch of scoring. But Anthony Del Rosso, who had 21 points yesterday, he's really an X factor for this Arizona team, as last season over at Campbell did a little bit of everything. 19 points, 7 boards, 4+ assists per contest. And Toby Awaka continues to give you 10+ rebounds per game. You've got just a little bit too much size, in my opinion, for this Arizona team to fall short here, as you've got Mateusz Krivas, who's 7'2". He came in off the bench yesterday for a double-figure amount of points, so you've got a lot of depth with this Arizona team, but I do think that Oklahoma going to be able to hold in there, and Oklahoma, in my opinion, is a team that can play a little bit more up-tempo, and they could also play a little bit of a slower game, so 155 or less in on the over, 156 or higher, the under, I'm willing to lay up to 5 with this Oklahoma team, 6 or more taking the points with Arizona, and right now, seeing a circa opener of Arizona, a 5-point favorite, that'd be the max I'd be willing to lay. Right now, their total is a 152.5. We would also take a look at that over 791, 792 on the betting board. It is Providence against Davidson. The circa opener is Providence being a 5-point favorite, and your total on this game, it is 136, and set by total at 135. You're at the 136. I'm in on the under, and I set Providence as a 7-point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay this number. It is a Providence unit that I think is going to be able to do a pretty rock solid job against a Davidson team that I still have my question marks about, certainly, after what we saw yesterday. They got off to a nice undefeated start, but they just got completely plowed yesterday for Davidson. You've got Connor Kachera, who off the ball is able to give you about 15 or so points per contest. He has been able to shoot in that neighborhood about 40% from 3-point range, and overall it's a Davidson team that's shooting in the high 30s from 3-point range. They don't turn the ball over a ton, but I question this team down low. Reed Bailey entered into yesterday with 8 rebounds per game, but they got completely plowed on the glass yesterday, losing that rebound battle to Arizona by a count of 47-31, so that was a little bit less than tremendous. You've been able to get quite a bit of production as well to Bobby Durkin, who he's been able to supply the team with about 16.5 points at 6'7", has nice versatility, currently shooting north of 50% from 3. Should be seeing that go downward just a little bit, but it's also a Providence unit that they're probably not going to have Bryce Hopkins out there in this game. He might be able to return, but I would say bank on him not playing, and even if he does, who knows how close to 100% he's going to be. But for Providence, they finally found some offense yesterday. They were helped out by having Oklahoma give you too many men out there on the floor, but that said, Bentley Joseph has been really the main double-figure scorer for the team. He's logging about 12.5 points, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range. I like what I'm seeing out of Wesley Cardet as well, the transfer from Chicago State, 10+ points. He's able to supply the team with about 5 boards. Good versatility there for a Providence team that has been a top 35 team in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Probably went a little bit northward with what we saw yesterday. Need to reel it in a little bit more in terms of turnovers, and I think the real X factor here, Jabari Abdul-Rahim. He had 0 points yesterday overall for the season, just 6 points per contest after last year. It was a nice double-figure score over at Georgia that was able to shoot it relatively well from 3-point range, but the 7-footer in Christ Edesonko, he's able to give you about 5 or so rebounds per game. That's just an element that I don't think that Davidson is going to be able to match up with. And then Jaden Pierre has been able to do a nice job in the backcourt, give you some facilitation, while Bryce Hopkins has been out of the fold. So I do think that Providence finds a way to get the job done against a Davidson team that up until this tournament really hadn't been tested. Wanted to lay up to 6.5 with Providence and set my total to 135, so you're at the 136. I'm in on the under, 793, 784 on the betting board. It is Purdue, and they're going to be playing against NC State. This is out there for the Rady Children's Invitational. Hopefully I said that correctly. In the state of California with Purdue, they are a 7 to a 7.5 point favorite. And your total on this game, it is 146. This opened up at 5. When I wrote this up, this was between a 6.5 to a 7, and I'm willing to lay up to 8 with Purdue. This is one of the games that made my write-up. I do think that even though the differential for this one for me isn't so big, they find a way to get the job done against NC State. This is an NC State unit that right now has been one of the more dominant teams if you look metrically in all of college basketball, but they really haven't played anyone. And for this Purdue team, they've already went up against Alabama. They've already went up against Marquette. I think that that's a big deal. And you've got a veteran backcourt that just knows how to be able to get the job done. Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith, these two guys combined for 27 points per contest. Smith is able to throw in their 5 boards, 9 assists. Very versatile, very efficient with this team. Shooting 43% from 3, and all season long last year, they shot 40+% from the outside. Now, what has me concerned about Purdue is that they're only getting about 8 offensive rebounds per game. Trey Kaufman-Wren has been able to give you about 6 boards per contest, but the only other guy that's really giving you north of 5 rebounds per game, that is Braden Smith. And on the flip side, you do have an NC State team that they should be able to do an okay job down low, but it's not like they've got ideal size. Ben Middlebrooks, Brendan Huntley, Hatfield, they've been able to combine for about 9.5 or so rebounds per game. And then Jaden Taylor, he's been able to supply the team with 14 points per contest, but he hasn't been necessarily at his best from three-point range. NC State should be a little bit better than a 28% three-point shooting team, but it's not like they've got amazing shooters. Like Marcus Hill comes on over from Bowling Green last year. He's a 20-point per game scorer over at Bowling Green, but he shot less than 30% from three-point range. Mike O'Connell last year shot about 37% from the outside. Saw a nice uptick in terms of his role towards the back half of the season in the ACC and NCAA tournament, but he's not necessarily a guy seeking out scoring as well for NC State. They've been able to do a good job thus far this season of generating turnovers, but that's never necessarily been their forte as well. And this is a Purdue team that they do a relatively nice job taking care of the ball. For Purdue, they've gotten to at least 80 points in 3 of their last 4 games. And for NC State, they've absolutely plowed all the 5 teams that they played thus far this season, winning every one of those games by double figures, aside from the Presbyterian game. I think might have been a 9-point game, but I had said for NC State, again, you're playing against teams like Presbyterian, USC Upstate, Colgate, William & Mary, and Coastal Carolina. This is a big step up in competition. Do think that Purdue going to be able to take it to them there, and I do think that Purdue going to continue to be very efficient on the offensive end. I did set my total at 148, so I am in on the over, and I wrote up Purdue, and I'm willing to lay up to 7.5 with Purdue. 795, 786, another game that made my write-up, as BYU is going to be playing against Ole Miss. This is out there in California, and Ole Miss a 3.5 to a 4-point dog. Total on this game is 151. Wrote up Ole Miss. I felt like they should be the favorite in this one. I'm willing to take them outright on the money line for BYU. Once again, one of the best metric teams in all of college basketball in terms of offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency. Who in the heck have they played thus far? Because right now they're going up against Queens NC at home. I think the UC Riverside is probably the biggest test that they've gotten all season long. Idaho, teams like that, and now they have to step up to the big time playing against an Ole Miss team that already took it to Colorado State this season. I like what I'm seeing out of this Ole Miss team as they started off a little bit cold from three-point range to begin the season. I'm waiting for Matthew Morrell to really get into form as to what he was able to give the team a season ago. He's right now giving you about 12 points per contest, shooting in the low 30s from three-point range, but even with that, Ole Miss, they've been one of the best teams in terms of ball control. They only turned the ball over 8.2 times per contest. That's a top 5 mark in all of college basketball in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, with Sean Padula, the point guard from Virginia Tech, making the difference. 14.5 points, 4 boards, 3 assists, 3 steals per game, and this is also one of the best teams at being able to rip it away in all of college basketball. For BYU, they should have a nice edge down low with Kibakita being able to give you 10 rebounds per game. Fusani Traore is able to give you about 9 rebounds per game as well, and overall for the team, they're shooting 36% from 3. You have to love the international man of mystery in Igor Demin, who's been able to give you 15 points per contest, and under the radar, I think that you're going to be able to get more moving forward. 6'10" Mihailo Boskovic, who he comes on over from Serbia. He's been a little bit muted thus far this season, but he needs a guy that has 6'10" size. He's able to stroke it from 3, was very good internationally, but you've been dealing with a few injuries of your own with a guy like Dallin Hall, who's only been able to play in 1 game this far this season. I know that they've had a little bit with regards to Kita missing a game or 2 as well, so that's an issue. Dawson Baker has come back in the fold. He's shooting about 39% from three-point range, but Kenyon Catchings as a freshman feels like he's a little bit of a black hole every time he gets a ball. He doesn't necessarily pass it out. Been able to give you about 11.5 points per contest, but do think that this Ole Miss team that is very positionless, they do a good job of being able to rip the ball away. That's going to be able to be a nice elixir to the size that you've got with BYU, and I do think that with the step up in competition, BYU is going to have their struggles. I did set my total at 152. Do think that you get a game where both of these teams are going to make a bunch of threes, so I'm in on the over. I do like Ole Miss outright on the money line. That's a right up I've got. 797, 798 on the betting board. It is Santa Clara, and they're going to be playing against TCU. This is also out there in Palm Springs, California, and for TCU, they are 3.5 to 4 point favorites. And your total on this game between 146.5 to 147, and for TCU, I did set them as a favorite of 1.5 points. So I'm going to be willing to take the points with Santa Clara. Santa Clara is out there in their home state, and for Santa Clara, this is a very feast or famine team. When this team is on, they are on, and they are doing an absolutely tremendous job. As you've got down low a 7-footer in Christoph Tilly that's able to give you north of 5 rebounds per game. Johnny O'Neal at 6'10" is able to give you some 3-point shooting. Last year, shot in that neighborhood about 32.5% from 3. This year has struggled a little bit more, but still has the ability to be able to stretch out the defense. And then Carlos Stewart, being able to get him acclimated with this offense is big. 2 seasons ago at Santa Clara, he was shooting 40% from 3 with 15 points, 2.5 assists per game, just 7.5 points per game thus far this season. But I do think that he's going to pick it up after spending last year over at LSU. Adama Ball continues to give you 14 points per game. And for TCU, it's just a delegation of roles. It seems like Noah Reynolds is going to be that main facilitator for the team. He's been able to give you about 5 assists, 9 points per game, though I do think that Frankie Collins should be that guy. He is a top 5 player in terms of steals per game last season over at Arizona State. Has never necessarily been the strongest 3-point shooter, but he's able to facilitate good offense. Meanwhile, you have Fashawn Elway, Tazarian White, Brandon Wetzel, trio of guys that are able to give you between about 10.5 to 11.5 points per contest. But again, a little bit rhymeless, a little bit reasonless as what you get there. Ernest Uday has been great down low with 9 boards per contest, but he's really the lone guy that's willing to crash the glass for a TCU team that has had to shift down their tempo a little bit more. As for this TCU unit, it's been a little bit of a downtick in terms of what you typically get from them on the glass with Santa Clara and their overall size. I do think that they're going to cause a lot of frustrations for TCU. In the end, I do think that TCU has just enough in the backcourt to be able to get the job done, and they've been able to do a nice job, be able to generate some turnovers. We've seen some shakiness with the Santa Clara defense, to say the least, as they have given up 80-plus points 3 out of their last 5 games, but they've really been able to dial it back in their last 2 games. Very nearly knocked out Stanford their last time out as well. So, like where the Santa Clara team is heading, I set my line at a 1.5, so being able to get anything north of a deuce, I'm willing to take those points from Santa Clara, and I did set my total at a 147.5 with the way that Santa Clara is able to just light you up on offense, and they've been a very up-tempo team, and this is a TCU team that they themselves have a lot in the backcourt. So, do like the over, and I do like the points with Santa Clara. 799, 800. Another game that made my write-ups as Colorado State. It's going to be playing against Washington. Washington, a 2 to 2.5 point favorite. Totals between 141 to 142. Wrote up Colorado State, and I like them outright on the money line. I feel like Colorado State should be the favorite. I set them at minus 1.5, and with this Colorado State team, they get to go up against a Washington unit that just really doesn't have a lot in the backcourt. Like, for Washington, you got to love what you're able to get out of Great Osabor, who's been able to give you 8-plus rebounds per game. He's been a little bit intermittent throughout his performances this season, but still has been able to supply the team with 12-plus points per contest. It's really been Tyler Harris who's been standing out to me. He comes in for Portland. He's been able to give you 14 points, 6 boards at 6'8" last season, was able to shoot 36% from 3. He's up to north of 40% from the outside, but what are you going to be able to get out of some of these guys like a Tyree Iheanacho, who comes in from North Dakota? He's giving you like 7 points, 2.5 assists per contest. You've got Lewis Coatwright, who comes on over from the Metro Atlantic. He's not really giving you a lot of facilitation. This bunch has been turned the ball over 13 times per contest. They shoot 61% at the free throw line. They're just really not doing the little things well, and it all comes back to the inexperience in the backcourt. Very nearly not lost to a D2 school earlier this year as well. And for Colorado State, this isn't the team that they used to have, as Isaiah Stevens is out of the fold, but Jalen Crooker-Johnson, the rookie of the year out there in the OVC, he's been very versatile for the team, shooting in the mid-30s from 3, 11.5 points, 5.5 boards per contest. McQuay Clifford, he's averaging a double-double, 3 assists, 19 points, 10 boards. Absolutely love what he's able to bring to the table. Bowen Bourne, he's been able to do a nice job in a, shall we say, muted role in terms of his offensive production. He was last year at Northern Iowa really the main man in terms of scoring. Now he's helping dole out the ball with Ethan Morton, as these two guys combined to average about 6 assists per contest. And with Colorado State, it's a very unselfish offense. They don't have the same 3-point shooting that they did a season ago. They're shooting just 30% from 3, but they're only turning the ball over about 11 times per contest. They're rebounding by committee, has been able to work out very well. And they've got some upside with a guy in Kyle Jorgensen, who's come in as a 6'9" freshman from the great state of Minnesota. He's been able to log for the season team, right around about 3.5 boards, 8.5 points per game, has some relatively good production as a just versatile piece at 6'9", and for Washington, just very much a work in progress team as of right now. Do think that Colorado State, a team that they are coming off of a rough loss against UC Riverside, but at the very least they've challenged themselves a little bit more than Washington. They find a way to be able to get the job done here. So wrote up Colorado State. I like them outright on the money line. I did set my total at a 143.5 with Colorado State. I do think that they're going to be able to find their offense, and Washington is a team that I anticipate wanting to go a little bit more up tempo. That's been seen with them scoring 74 plus in 4 of their last 5 games. So in on the over, and I'm willing to take Colorado State on the money line. 801, 802, another game that made my write-ups. Utah State is going to be playing against St. Bonaventure. Bonaventure is a 7 to 8 point underdog. Total on this game is 149.5, and with Utah State, I did set them as a favorite of 11 points, so wrote up them laying the number. For St. Bonaventure, I just still have my trepidations with a team that just lost their entire backcourt from a season ago. You have some nice pieces out there, like Deshaun Bowen has been able to give you 4 assists per game. Chance Moore comes on over from the Missouri Valley Conference, has been able to log for the team 16 points per game. They are doing a better job than normal of being able to generate turnovers, about 8.5 steals per game out of them, but they still shoot about 32% from three-point range. You've had Lajee Jones shoot north of 50% from three-point range. Certainly think that that's going to be seeing a little bit of a downtick, but on the flip side, for Utah State, fully recognize that the competition that they played, not necessarily been the world's greatest. That was until they were able to knock off Iowa, and they did that out there in the Midwest. I believe that was in the state of Missouri. But for this Utah State team, you've got Ian Martinez, who's able to give you 21 points per contest. You've got Mason Fosloff, who's back from a season ago, 15 points, 4.5 boards, and between Martinez and Fosloff, darn near 8 assists per game. So while they're really good scorers and they're shooting north of 50% from three-point range, they're dishing it out as well. This is also a Utah State team that ranks in the top 20 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis as well. Ubin Gesserse, he has been as efficient as it gets. He has not missed a field goal attempt thus far this season. He's missed a few free throws, not a field goal attempt though, so I mean that's big down low as well against a St. Bonaventure team that doesn't necessarily have a ton down low as well. They've got one returning piece that I like in Noah Brown. He's pretty much the only of their top 5 scorers. That's back from a season ago, about 5 boards, 12.5 points per contest, but don't have a ton of depth with this Bonnie's team either. For Utah State, they just come at you in droves, and I do think that St. Bonaventure going to look to crank down the tempo, and I think that they're going to have some success with it. That said, this is also a Utah State team that has been able to put the clamps down on defense, generate those turnovers, so I did set my total at a 147. I am in on the under. This is, by the way, out there in the great state of Florida, and with Utah State, made them an 11-point favorite, so wrote them up laying the number. This is 803, 804 on the betting board. You've got North Texas and Northern Iowa doing battle from Kissimmee, Florida. And for North Texas, they find themselves as 3 to 3.5 point favorites. Totals between 127.5 to a 128. Set my total at a 127.5, so you're at the 128. I'm in on the under, but 1 to lay up to 5 with North Texas. Recognize that North Texas a few days ago unable to get the job done in terms of a cover against Oregon State, get the job done outright on the money line, but for this Northern Iowa team, I feel like there's still a few unanswered questions for them. They've been able to do a better job down low this year than they have in the past, as Jacob Hudson, who was a very versatile piece a season ago, he's been able to form himself into being a little bit of a better rebounder. He's been able to log for the team 12.5 points, 5.5 boards. Overall for Northern Iowa, they shoot 39% from three-point range. I like Leon Bond coming on over from Virginia, 8 points, 5 boards out of him thus far this season. And Titan Anderson, 14 points along with 6 rebounds, but that main facilitator role is something that I do have a question mark on. They've been looking a lot more to Mr. Campbell, as you've been able to get about 3 assists, 9 points, 4 boards out of Trey Campbell, but he just doesn't feel like a main facilitator and has been able to shoot it well from three-point range. Last 2 seasons has shot north of 40% from the outside, but this North Texas team, just an incredibly tough customer. They need to guard the three-point line just a little bit better, but Jasper Floyd, he's a do-it-all sort of versatile piece. 8.5 points, 4.5 assists, 3 boards. He'll give you a little bit over a steal per game. North Texas overall shooting 35% for 3, back in the bottom 20 in terms of total possessions per game. And I sense Northern Iowa starting to pull down their tempo a little bit more as well. That's a big reason why on this 128 to 128.5 total, I'm in on the under. But that said, with North Texas, do think that they're going to be able to do a solid job down low with Mule Sissoko, who really doesn't give you a lot of scoring, doing a nice job down low, being able to pull in their 4 rebounds per game. Aiden Wright, he's been able to give you about 12 points per contest, shooting in the high 30s from three-point range. And I do think that when it's all said and done, North Texas, they're going to be able to get just enough out of Jonathan Massey, the 6'6" combo player, to be able to get past Northern Iowa in this ordeal. And I do think that North Texas going to get their slow bleeder style. So I'm willing to lay up to 5 with North Texas here at the 128. I'm also in on the under. 805, 806 on the betting board. Another game that made my write-ups. This is from the great state of Arizona. You've got Northwestern taking on Butler. Butler is a 1.5 to a 2-point dog. So on this game is 134.5. Wrote up Northwestern. I set them as a 5-point favorite. For Butler, this this team is losing the turnover battle night after night. They're outside the top 275 in terms of being able to take care of the ball and not committing a turnover on offense, and on defense they're outside the top 330 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They have to match up with Nick Martinelli as well, who's going to be the best player out there on the floor for Northwestern. 24 points, 7 boards, currently shooting 66% from 3. That'll be going downward just a little bit, but for Northwestern, I've been able to do a good job being able to flow good offense through KJ Wyndham as well. He's been able to give you about 3 assists per game. Need to get a little bit more facilitation out of him. That's asking a lot because you lose Boo Buie in the offseason. And for Butler, they do return their top 2 scorers from a season ago. Pierre Brooks and Jamile Telford have been able to combine for about 33 points per game, but you don't get a lot down low. Andre 3000 screen, the 7-footer from Bucknell, is able to give you a block, 6 points, 6 boards per contest, but not a lot of size. Patrick McCaffrey, staying 6'9", he's able to give you about 4.5 boards, currently shooting 50% from 3, and all in all, it's a Butler team that's shooting north of 40% from the outside. Finley Bizjack give you about 4.5 assists per game as well, so he's been able to step up in the backcourt in a little bit more of a facilitation role, but for Northwestern, they're also much better on the glass than they were a season ago. Last year, they were outside the top 250 in terms of their rebound rate. Now you've been able to get much more production out of someone like a Matthew Nicholson, who's not giving you a lot of scoring, but he's been able to give you about 4.5 rebounds per game. Justin Mullins, who comes over from Denver, only about 4 points per game, but he gives you 6 rebounds per game. They've got a lot of guys that are just really good fits, and bringing back Brooks Beinart there as well, as he missed the first 4 games of the season, but for Barnizer, now giving you 16.5 points, 8 boards, 3 steals per contest. I think that really completes this Northwestern team. So did write up Northwestern in this spot, and I did semi-total at 137. You've got a Butler team that I anticipate playing a little bit more mid-tempo. They've scored 78 plus in each of their last 3 games, and Northwestern seems to be humming with their offense as well. So do like the over, and I wrote up Northwestern 807, 808 on the betting board. Another game that made my write-ups, as we've got UNLV and Mississippi State doing battle. Mississippi State opens up as a 9-point favorite. Now they're a 7.5-point favorite. Total on this game between 146 to 147. Even with the move, I still do like UNLV. I wrote them up with the points. For UNLV, they've been able to do a nice job being able to generate turnovers, and they're a top 50 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, with a guy, Dedrin Thomas, who I think is going to be able to keep them right in this game. For Thomas, he's been able to log for the team 15 plus points per contest, shooting north of 40% from 3-point range, so he's had himself a really nice start to the season. Flip side for Mississippi State, they're actually a top 35 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but we saw in their lone game away from home this year against SMU, their defense did crater a little bit. Their offense was still pretty rock solid, as you forgot Josh Hubbard, who's been able to supply for the team 20 points per game. And for Mississippi State, 2 years ago, they were dead last in the country in terms of 3-point shooting percentage, and now they're shooting closer to 33.5% from the outside. And to their credit, they've really been able to improve their offense with just not turning the ball over. They're only turning the ball over about 8.5 times per game. Not quite the same team down low as they have been in past years. When you lose Tolu Smith, that's going to happen to you. Keyshawn Murphy has been able to give the team 7.5 boards per contest. You've got RJ Melendez, who's got a little bit of versatility as well. But on the UNLV side, Jeremiah Cherry, he's been able to do a nice job giving the team 7 rebounds per game. Past that, they don't have a ton down low, but I expect a lot more moving forward out of Jalen Hill, and I think that we really saw that on display against New Mexico State. 16 points, 9 boards, and he was a starter over at Oklahoma about 2 to 3 years ago. Last year, played just 7 games due to injury, but at 6'6", offers a lot of versatility, including nearly 3 steals per contest for this defense, as they've been able to come up with about 8.5 steals per contest. And then you've got a nice off-the-ball scorer in Julian Rich-Swain, who's been able to shoot north of 44% from 3-point range, career about 36.5% 3-point shooter. Spent last year glued to the bench over at Florida. He's been able to log for the team about 10 points per contest. With UNLV, do you think that they're going to do a nice job valuing the ball themselves? They've only been able to turn the ball over about 10 times per contest. They've got quite a bit of depth in terms of that backcourt. Jalen Bradford, who comes on over from Oral Roberts, is able to give you some nice 3-point shooting, and just not the same Mississippi State defense that we've seen in past years as well. Bunch has now given up 73 plus in each of their last 2 games and got the job done against Utah and SMU, but it was a little bit hairy, and I like the way that this UNLV team has been able to step up defensively as well. Lost that game to Memphis, but past that has been able to do a really nice job on that front. So this is a game where I set my total at 142.5. Do you think that both of these teams can have a little bit more difficulty on offense than we've been seeing throughout the season thus far, even though you do have a Mississippi State team that's playing a little bit more up-tempo, so I'm in on the under. And with the write-up, I did take the points with UNLV. 809, 810 on the betting board. It is St. Mary's, and they are going to be playing against USC. This is from EQ Arena out there in Palm Springs, and for St. Mary's, they are a 4.5-point favorite total this game, between 141.5 to a 142, and with USC, I'm going to be willing to take the points. I set them as a 3-point dog. For St. Mary's, they're still well outside the top 270 in terms of total possessions per game, but they've been pretty efficient with regards to their offense. They've been less efficient with regards to their defense. They're outside the top 125 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, so that is a little bit of a concern, and for USC, they just need to figure out how to utilize a big man in this rotation, and you've got yourself a guy in Josh Cohen who's got a lot of versatility. Last year over at UMass, 15 points, 8 boards. He's able to give you a little bit of 3-point shooting as well, but for this USC team, they just have not been able to utilize him too well in the system that has been very much based around Desmond Claude along with St. Thomas. St. Thomas, he's a little bit of a do-it-all, 6'6" guy that comes on over from Northern Colorado, logging for the team about 9 points, 5.5 boards, 5 assists, not shooting it well from 3, and overall, do think that USC and their 33% 3-point shooting should be going northward. They also get back Terrence Williams, who missed the first 2 games of the season. Since coming back, I shot north 40% from the outside, 13 points per contest, so love what he's able to bring to the table, along with Chibuzo Ogbo, who last season over at Boise State shot north of 40% from 3. This year, more like 37% from the outside, and he has Desmond Claude have been able to combine for about 24.5 points per game for St. Mary's. Life without Aiden Mahaney still has not been too bad because they've got Augustus Marasolinas, the WCC Player of the Year from last year, and he's picking up right where he left off. 14.5 points, 6 assists, shooting the high 30s from 3-point range. But the real surprise here, 6'8", Paulas Merkaiskis. He's come over and he's been able to give the team 14 points, 10 boards. Last season was glued to the bench after coming over from Lithuania, and this season has been a very rock-solid piece. So he did play just 14 minutes in the last game against Cal Poly. You do want to be noting that they limited his minutes for some reason, but still have one of the best teams in terms of rebound rate in all of college basketball. And a St. Mary's team that doesn't give you a lot of second chances, as you got Mitchell Saxon down low, give you about 7 boards, 8 points per game. Luke Barrett has been able to take strides forward in a bigger role, about 12.5 points, 7.5 boards. It's a St. Mary's team that is pretty smart with the ball. They turn the ball over just 11 times per contest. They've struggled a little bit with their 3-point shooting as well, and I do think that with the St. Mary's team, you're going to see a little bit of dip in terms of their offensive execution. I think defensively, they're still going to be rock solid. And for USC, 71 points or fewer allowed in 4 of their last 5 games. They're not necessarily pushing tempo. Feels like they're trying to figure themselves out a little bit more on offense as well. So I did set my total 139. I do like the under with USC. Set them as a 3-point dog, so we'll take 4+, and we wrap things up with 8-11, 8-12 on the betting board. Arizona State is going to be playing against New Mexico out there in Palm Springs, and for Arizona State, they're a 4 to 4.5 point underdog, and your total is between 158.5 to 159.5. Set New Mexico as a 2.5 point favorite. So I'm going to be one to take the points with Arizona State. Arizona State is going to have a very tough time down low, as you've got a guy that I absolutely love, and Nelly Jr. Joseph, that's averaging darn near a double-double right now. 14+ points, right around about 10 or 11 rebounds per game. He has been tremendous for this bunch, but you do have to fear the turnovers with New Mexico as well. They've been turning the ball over well north of 12.5 times per game. And for Arizona State, they're actually able to shoot this season, something that we haven't been able to say in quite some time. They're shooting 38% from the outside as they bring in Olsen Mason, who's been able to do a nice job coming on over from the Missouri Valley Conference, about 13 points per contest. Has thrown in there about 3 assists per game as well. BJ Freeman has been that little bit of a do-it-all guy from UW Milwaukee, 11.5 points, 4.5 boards. For Arizona State, you're going to need to find a little bit more down low. You've got a 7-footer in Sean Phillips, who's been able to give you 5.5 rebounds per game. Jaden Contance has been able to give you 7.5 points, 7.5 boards. I'm having a tough time saying that name, but you've also been able to get about 14 points per game out of an unlikely source in freshman Jusan Sanan. I thought that he was going to be okay as a freshman. Didn't think he would be shooting north of 50% from 3-point range and leading the way in terms of scoring, but that's what he has been for Arizona State. And then for Donovan Dent, he has been cooking it up. 8 assists, so he does have 3 turnovers per contest, 17 points per game for this New Mexico team, so he's been able to do a relatively quality job there. You've got Mustafa Amzil and his versatility with about 13 points, 6.5 boards, but for New Mexico, they've been playing pretty much all of their games at home thus far this season. They did play a game out here in lovely Las Vegas against UCLA. That was actually Henderson, but still out here in the great state of Nevada. They took that loss against St. John's, and that did expose their defense a little bit, but overall, it is a New Mexico team that's relatively battle-tested, and we saw Arizona State be able to hold in there against Gonzaga as well, so both of these teams have done a relatively solid job in their step-up games. I think that this is going to be an up-tempo game and a little bit frenetic. New Mexico, one of the best teams at generating steals, but another team that does a little bit of a rough job in terms of being able to protect the ball as well. So I do foresee a little bit of a lower total just because I do think that you get a lot of turnovers in this game. Semi-total at 154.5. I'm in on the under. I do think that the Arizona State backcourt keeps them lively. I'm willing to take the points, and that'll wrap things up for the Thanksgiving Thursday edition of Cuffs Cuffs Soups, part of the Beats and Family podcast. Big thanks to Sean Paul, who does great work over at the Field of 68, for joining me in the last segment. If you do like to hear from this fine podcast, Cuffs Cuffs Soups, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter / X timeline at @JNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter. So, as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. Then from there, you're able to fire whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast by that 5-star review. Coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season, which means I'm back at you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
This is your before and after story, where your first steps towards a new life-changing career begin. Southeastern College can take you there. We offer in-demand hybrid and online programs with hands-on training, led by in-field career professionals, and career services to put you on the path to a rewarding and fulfilling future. This is where your transformation begins. Southeastern College, your future is bright. Visit sec.edu to get started.